Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. The Monitor team is pleased to partner with Solify for today's event. Across secured finance, momentum is shifting and expectations are rising. AI is rewriting the rules of the industry by moving beyond automation. Growth-focused organizations are looking for partners who can advise and evolve with them. Solify is building the future with a unified, AI-enabled open finance platform designed for scale, speed, and continuous innovation. As a leader in secured finance, Solify has expanded its capabilities through best-in-class acquisitions such as LeasePath, which serves the mid-market, and DataScan, which powers wholesale and automotive inventory risk management. These technologies reinforce Solify's position as the trusted provider of end-to-end secured finance solutions. Solify helps lenders modernize with confidence and create new business opportunities by bringing deep expertise, disciplined execution, and relentless focus on service together across industries. The new Solify unlocks data visibility that rises above lines of business to deliver enterprise-wide insight. This is a new chapter for the industry. This is a moment to think bigger, to move faster, and to shape what comes next. I'm thrilled to introduce you to today's panel. Moderating today's live stream is Karan Oberoi, Chief Product Officer at Solify. And our panelists today include Gaurav Tiwari, Founder and Managing Partner at Omega Venture Partners, Darren Lacey, Chief Operating Officer and Senior Vice President at Oakmont Capital Services, Jeff Elliott, Founder and CEO of Elevex Capital, and Brett Sorensen, Chief Revenue Officer at KLC Financial. We know you probably have a lot of questions for today's panel, so please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature on your Zoom screen. The panel will take questions throughout the event, so you don't need to wait until the end to submit yours. And with that out of the way, I will turn it over to you, Karan. Thanks.
Thank you, Rita. Great to have everyone join in. And again, thanks to this amazing set of, I'll call them the star-studded panel we've got today. So we've got industry veterans, we've got an AI advisor to the US government, we've got it all. So I'm really excited to hear all the perspectives, share it all, and we'd love to get as much interaction as possible from the audience. So we'll have some polls along the way. We'll also look forward to all your questions, and we'll try to cover all of the practical aspects as we can, as we all kind of start looking at what's AI bringing to us, right? We are now in December 2025. I think Gen AI has actually been around for a while. I believe it's actually been 3 years and 2 days. I think November 30, 2022 was when ChatGPT was launched. So I think since then it's sort of taken over our attention span. It's taken over our feeds, our conversation topics. And it's been the hottest topic. It's on most of our agendas. We're almost tired of talking about it, and yet here we are. So Gaurav, I'd love to start with you. I know from our conversations a few times this year, you're one of the leading minds in AI, right? You're closely guiding tons of companies. You're supporting the U.S. government. You're advising everyone in taking the right steps in leveraging AI as we all transition through this wave. So tell us. What, in your view, are the biggest shifts in AI? What's happening now, that are making it even more transformative, especially for our domains like asset finance?
Yeah, it's great to be here, Karan, and thanks for the introduction. We started Omega because we recognized the seismic shift that AI represented for the future of industry and software, and certainly a general purpose technology in every sense of the word, in the sense that it's percolating across every single industry, including asset finance, very much so. But, we had the confidence and conviction to launch Omega as the nation's first firm that was thematically focused on AI well before this was consensus. So about 5 years ago, 2 years before the ChatGPT launch, which really spearheaded this in the public conscience. What's happening is nothing short of astonishing. This is bigger than the internet. This is bigger than mobile. This is a major platform shift that will reorder the competitive landscape in meaningful ways. And I think it's really important for all businesses that want to do well to be on the right side of that line as it develops. To answer your specific question, over the last couple of years, we've really seen AI shifting meaningfully from experiments to infrastructure. 65% of companies are now using Gen AI weekly, and 3 out of 4 workers use it without waiting for approval. So this isn't hype. It's a major platform shift, and it's fundamentally changing the future of work and what how work is done. In many ways, asset finance is ground zero because it sits at the intersection of structured data, documents, risk, and regulation. So across our portfolio, we see a very similar pattern. The winners pair AI with workflow governance and real business outcomes. So the question today is no longer if AI matters, it's whether firms deploy it coherently and responsibly, or let ad hoc tools drive it, or let their competitors innovate faster.
That thanks, Gaurav. That makes a lot of sense. I think we are obviously seeing that seismic shift as you refer to. We see that everywhere. We see that with different companies. So maybe moving on to our industry veterans. Maybe let's start with you, Jeff. I think you've been an active participant in this industry. You've done it all. You've worked for a large bank. You've now started a new equipment finance business. Could you tell us a bit about how you are seeing this shift in your organization, or in in with your partners and your clients?
Sure. Let me get my audio on there. Yeah, looking back at the banking time and 30 plus years, we have a lot of data in equipment finance. And I think when AI first started coming out, it wasn't as useful as it is now. It gets so much better almost on a daily basis. Even a year ago, wasn't as good as it is now. And so as AI has matured, I think it delivers more automation, reasoning, data synthesis, things that can help with asset finance. Just think of all the upfront application data, credit data, back end, collection and asset management data, especially asset management data, has been managed at banks and large leasing companies on spreadsheets for generations and not really accessible. And that data can be used to really make better decisions. We've been super fragmented in our industry, and I think there's a real opportunity to use real-time intelligence to compete differently than we've competed before. So Elevex is really about that, using an embedded finance and AI-driven approach, tech-enabled. Independents like that, I think, are going to outcompete, monoline equipment finance niche players like that, and really focus on the technology and speed and delivery, the things we can provide differently. The way I kind of think about it, to wrap it up from a setting the stage, is AI replaces latency and inconsistency, but not judgment. So we're still humans behind the AI. We're using it. We're checking it. It makes us faster. It makes us better. We can deliver things to customers in any way they want to be delivered. If it's face to face, knee to knee, we can still do that. There's a role that AI will provide us in getting ready for that conversation with the customer. But if they want to self-serve, or they want to talk to an agent, or they want to do things 24/7, 365 days a year, that's what we're going to be able to do with the smart AI technology and a tech-enabled platform, which you really couldn't afford unless you're just a really large monolith type entity. And even those entities didn't provide the kind of customer service that I think we can provide using the technology. So I really think it's a new frontier, and it really is just starting to get there, in my opinion.
Great. I think what you just said, replacing latency and complacency, that'll stick with me for sure.
Mhm.
Darren, moving on to you, what is driving your investments, or what's driving the urgency in your organization in the AI space?
Yeah, we're thankfully seeing a lot of growth in our own business, and then we always try to do it at the most efficient rate. Trying to do the same amount of volume or more volume with the same or similar number of people. Really, scaling is important, and you got to do it efficiently. And in today's world, that involves using AI. So we've been very fixated on how can we scale up certain departments, operationally or sales wise, that we can take advantage of it, right? And the unit metrics look better, the funding per employee, the profitability per employee gets better, and truthfully just helping employees not, burn the candle at both ends, but work a little bit smarter and be able to do it in a normal workday, and really take away some of the monotonous, mundane tasks that, are there and are necessary in our business, but not loved. It's, as Jeff was alluding to, we still have to think about what we're doing. And so you take out some of the manual stuff and really still have that decisioning that's handled by a human behind the scenes. You have a combination of high tech and high touch where there's people there thinking about that. So honestly, it's the striving for keeping up with growth. So filling areas that we need to continue to add bodies, but first, let's see how we can use AI to, either remove a process entirely or, definitely make it quicker and more efficient. And honestly, it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's addicting. I'm sure those of us that spend time, which is, over half of us probably, once you get into digging around and writing prompts and getting results, you continue to do it. A few hours pass by pretty quick. So it's exciting, I think, and I don't want to be falling behind. I think we're not in the back, but we're also not the leader, but we're trying to stay ahead of things as much as we can to implement it to our advantage. So I think it's just the need to stay on the front end as much as possible is keeping us very active in it, interested in it. So.
Well, absolutely makes sense. And Brett, if I may ask you, similar to Darren's organization, I'm quite well aware that you've been looking at driving investments in the AI space. But I'm wondering if there are any practical realities that might be making AI plans or execution on them more difficult, or is there anything that you'd like to share with us on those lines?
Yeah, I think it starts with like the leadership team, right, and making it a priority because some of these. It's evolving so quickly. They're new. We have a lot of shiny toys we can use and deploy into marketing operations. And it's when people hear about AI, they automatically and read the headlines, they think, I'm going to lose my job, right? But really, it's encouraging every employee to embrace these tools, to use them and to think about ways where they can be more efficient. And it's been an evolution, for us, and trying different AI tools, different platforms, things that work. We've had a lot of learnings, and as we've stubbed our toe, right? We've had some great successes, but through all of those, there's been a tremendous amount of learning and more comfort that this isn't here to, we're not here to replace work. It's to make, like what Darren said, everyone more efficient at what they do, speed to an answer to a customer, make that more efficient. So it's been, but there's definitely a mind shift that's occurred over the course of the last year at KLC, which has been very positive.
Oh, thanks.
Karan, if I could just reinforce that point that Brett, Darren, and Jeff made. This is really fundamental. I think there's two key points. Number one, AI is fundamentally augmentative to people. And, I believe we were the first firm in the country to say it is Iron Man, not Terminator, which is now a widely used kind of analogy. Because it is absolutely right, Brett, to your point, generative AI particularly, which is part of AI. Remember, there is AI as a discipline is 50 years old, and there's all this predictive traditional AI behind it. But generative AI is probabilistic. It's prone to making statistical mistakes. And so the best use cases, particularly in mission critical environments, are those where it can amplify and empower, our teams to do more and to reduce some of the grunt work, the work that doesn't get anybody excited about coming to work. And I think the second point is that we are still in the early innings. And I think as all of the panelists recognize, that doesn't mean we should sit and wait. The technology is changing every quarter pretty dramatically. We've never, this is one of the fastest velocity cycles that we have seen in any technology. But the truth is, it's not a viable option to wait for this to reach maturity. It is a viable option to start deploying it today with the kind of foresight to have a flexible enough architecture to be able to adapt to changes and developments as they occur in the marketplace. So I think both are true. And I just think too, the capstone of all this is that AI fundamentally, that allows you to figure out what use cases it actually solves. There's a lot of hype in the media about things like AGI. In our view, we don't believe those claims have any merit for the foreseeable future of AI achieving human-like consciousness or replacing human judgment. I think the core aspect of what all of our panelists bring to their jobs, deep domain expertise, customer empathy, common sense, judgment, and experience, are fundamentally human qualities that remain essential in an AI plus human workplace.
That's some great nuggets out there, Gaurav. I think I'll still remember the first thing you said. AI is Iron Man, not Terminator. I think that's going to stick with a lot of us as well. Thanks for sharing that. I'll just ask one last question before we move on to the next segment. One of the questions I hear often from people when I'm speaking to maybe more conservative companies or in certain domains, it's like, well, we've not really made any real AI investments so far? And are we too late? Have you missed the boat? I don't know if anyone from the panel wants to take this and kind of share your views on, if you're just starting the journey or if you've not taken any concrete steps yet, maybe you're just playing with the chat GPT or a few things here and there. Are you too late, or are you still in the early innings, like you said, Gaurav, and there's a lot that you can quickly catch up on and not be left behind? Yeah.
Yeah, I firmly believe it's absolutely not too late. I think there's a bunch of folks, who are also in the camp of, is it too early? And that is a valid concern because certainly the media headlines conflate what is possible and what is, maybe potentially feasible, but with very low likelihood. And I think that's a real issue with the kind of media hype around AI. And I think it's really important for business leaders to separate, well, what are the tangible, quantifiable, high ROI, high leverage use cases that I can deploy within my business to make it more compelling? To Jeff's point, things like underwriting, origination, operations, customer support, these are so core to the processes within asset finance, and every single company needs to become better at them. But it's absolutely not too late. While there is a tacit knowledge, the organizations start to develop, and we see this every day as they experiment and iterate with AI. There's a cumulative effect, which is very helpful. But the reality is you can't afford to wait. You don't want to wait because as this matures, you don't want to go to a race with a horse and carriage racing against a jet engine.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
fully agree. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
I would just have a simple point. I think it's not about is this the right time or not. I think you could wait if you wanted, or you could start right now. You could do it whenever. I think the challenge is, are you ready to do it? Meaning, is your data ready? The biggest challenge you have, you need to program your AI, right? And you got to have good data. If you got bad data, it's not going to work very well for you. If you don't have the right experiences to test it and build its knowledge base, you're not going to be able to do anything. So setting your systems up to be able to embrace AI is really the question, I think, more so than is now the time or can you wait? I think you can wait, but I think you got to focus on cleaning up your operations and preparing it for tomorrow's use. And legacy businesses, especially at like large banks, it's hard. It's hard to get that kind of dollars to do that kind of thing.
That's exactly right, Jeff. And part of the issue is most organizations don't realize their data challenges until they start to think about implementing an AI use case. So in fact, that journey of starting to lean into it exposes precisely to your point, the prerequisites needed to be successful. And your data is the fuel of AI. If the data is siloed, not high quality, not representative, then you absolutely face a garbage in, garbage out problem.
I mean, our thesis is that like it's all going this way, right? And to be competitive, to Jeff's point, you have to be on top of this. The hard thing is we don't have like three AI experts at our company, and so and I'm sure many people that are on the call right now and the panelists have taken calls with companies. A lot of them are early stage, right? Because it's they're relatively new companies, and like, who do I partner with, right? And what do I? It can be overwhelming, but you have to just make the best decision you can with the information you have, and take a swing, right? And try something, and then you will learn from that if it doesn't work out, and you can pivot. But just getting off first base is the most important thing
Yeah.
for us at least.
If I can just add one real quick point, I probably want to move on, but we won't have the luxury of time that I think people experienced or took advantage of with the whole electronic signature. I mean, the E-Sign Act was like 2001, and we were still having panels on it in the late 2015s, 18s, 19s. This is moving much faster, so it's definitely, you gotta just start somewhere and run with it. But it's adopting much quicker, and we'll be left behind if we're not staying ahead of it or staying educated on it for sure and testing it.
No, I think all great points. I'd love to move on now to the next segment, but before we do that, I'll just quickly do a wrap up of our thoughts. Right, so we all agree there's a seismic shift here. We've been seeing, we said AI is Iron Man, not Terminator, so it's not something to be scared of. From a roles perspective, there's still a lot for humans. Humans are going to bring empathy. They're going to bring judgment. They're going to help with the decision making, but we can definitely, take away the complacency, the latency, and we can start preparing our operations, start getting ready, even if we've not taken those steps. So I think great points on this segment on setting the stage on where the AI landscape is today. If we can bring up our first poll question in the meantime, I'd love to put it out also to the audience. And I think our first question is, where do you expect your organization on its AI adoption journey to be, especially for its client-facing operations, but this could be broadly in your operations, by mid of next year? So taking a 6 to 7 month horizon from now. So looking at the initial short-term steps, where do you expect your organization to be in? So that question will pop up on your screens in a second. Hopefully the audience can see that already. I'll just give it a few seconds because we have two questions to go through for this segment for the audience, and then we'll kind of start off with the second segment. All right, so I think I'm sure everyone's answering those. I'll just start with the second question already for you as well. For the audience again, which part of the asset finance life cycle do you expect AI to transform the most over the next 2 years? So we've taken two horizons here. The first question was around where are you and the organization over the next 6 months on this journey? And the second question is, which part of the asset finance life cycle do you expect AI to transform most over the next 2 years? So I think we'll leave the audience with those questions. I see some more questions coming up in our Q&A as well. And so let's take one quick question from the Q&A if it's still there. No, it's gone. Never mind. We'll move to the second segment, right? So in this segment, we want to basically talk about what are the emerging use cases. So we started hearing a bit about originations, credit underwriting, from operations, compliance, etc. So let's explore where AI is already delivering tangible value in our industry. So maybe I'll start with you, Brett, this time. Can you share any specific use cases your organization has deployed or is piloting, particularly in supporting either originations, underwriting, operations, or compliance?
Yeah. One pretty quick and easy win was creating personas for our salespeople, kind of who they are, what they target, who they're targeting, and using that persona to create some customized marketing. That's been, our head of marketing's done a great job utilizing those tools, making them much more efficient. And I'd say we're more focused, I'd say, really on the operational side, and a lot of the back office, taking the application, whatever form it comes in, spitting that into our system, taking documents, naming those, putting those in our system, analyzing those documents, pointing out strengths, weaknesses, to the entire underwriting package. And these are things that we've started to do, and we're in the middle of rolling out a broader initiative. But those are some things we're living through right now, and some of the ways we're utilizing it.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm looking at the polls at the same time, and if I look at most of the responses from the audience, you also see credit underwriting and operations and workflow efficiency really sort of emerging as the two most transformative use cases for most organizations, at least from the audience as well. So that's so Brett, looks like you guys are on the right path here. If I move over to you, Darren, where do you see AI's next big opportunity in the secured lending space? And especially, is there something that others are underestimating? There's obviously the generic ones, but sometimes I'm also curious to hear are any of you thinking, well, maybe others are really underestimating this particular opportunity?
Yeah, I always think that too, that I'm probably underestimating. I always feel like that missing the edge somewhere. But operationally, obviously, there's lots that we've talked about already, and I think that we see those as great areas. I really think, at least from the small ticket world that I live in, and probably other ticket sizes as well, the customer sales cycle and truly the sales process has a lot of opportunity. I think, and how we interact and how customers want to interact with us. Jeff touched on that a little bit at the beginning. I think we'll be able to use AI to really enhance the communication with customers, but I think importantly, do a better job of timing those interactions, to knowing what their sales cycle looks like, potentially based on what they've recently purchased. If it's not financed with you, what a UCC says they've purchased with somebody else, unfortunately, and says, hey, maybe it's time to reach out, or maybe they need a complementary product to go along with whatever they just acquired. But I think there's going to be a lot of data that can be used from the sales side to determine when you reach out to a customer, what you're calling them about. Is it potentially an opportunity for working capital to go along with the equipment they purchased? Or are there other unique needs that they might have that they're not telling you, but you can potentially predict with some analytical data that you've compiled. So I think, in the end too, being able to better put together a customized product offering to them, again, based on maybe their borrowing history in the past, their business cycle, the time of year, lots of different factors that AI can help you just work smarter and potentially shorten that sales cycle and close more deals. I think there's some good opportunity there.
No, absolutely. And just looking at a live question that popped in as well from Jan or Yan, what are your top 3 use cases keeping in mind the right effort to output ratio? I don't know if Darren or Brett or Jeff, any of you want to comment on that, but essentially like putting the emphasis on keeping in mind the right sort of effort to output ratio.
Well, I'll just say, our logo, I don't know if you can see it, is El Capitan, the big rock wall, right, that people try to climb. And so I think of things of the big rocks that we're trying to move within our platform, which is everything except sales, is the way I kind of think of it. So credit, operations, we're trying to do everything at the same time instead of a linear fashion. We're really trying to think about using automation and AI to really improve that process and take away the manual work that nobody wants to do and is done poorly. So things like if we buy a portfolio of 400 leases, we have to review all those documents, right? And we can have AI read those documents, assess that we have a full documentation package, is assigned by the right person, has got the right names. You'd be amazed how many times you get documents from really good originators that you just make errors because people make errors, right? And so you got to figure out where the document's wrong and then address that in your sale documentation. AI can turn that from weeks to a minutes task. So that's a big rock that we're trying to improve upon. Lots of other things, in the space to do that. Credit underwriting is one, especially on judgmental deals, not necessarily credit score deals. Credit score deals are, getting automated for years. However, those automations were limited, right? And there's not a lot of thinking involved there. It's just math based. And now when you add in some thinking on top of your model, you can come up with a much more better model, a more improved model. So that's things that we're working on. But, customer service is another one. Trying to stay open all the time, be able to help customers whenever they call. We're not there yet, but I got a call the other day from a customer on a Saturday, and I'm not at my computer, and I felt like an idiot because I couldn't really help him with what his challenge was at that time, and had to wait till I got back home. But it was, if we had the right agent set up to receive those calls, we probably could have figured it out immediately and solved their issue right on the spot. So that's the kind of thing we want to deploy.
Oh, yeah, makes a ton of sense, and I think all of those use cases resonate quite well with me as well. I think as I've been looking at this entire space, talking to a lot of our clients and a lot of other industry experts, I think everything you guys have just mentioned, whether it's credit underwriting, whether it's document intelligence, I think that's a big one and a low hanging fruit for many of us. customer servicing, the obvious one. On customer sales, I think great point, Darren. Often underestimated on how do you improve your sales process. I think a lot of us typically go running after operations broadly, while we sometimes stop thinking about, well, how do we actually get more revenue in, and how do we help AI let us help get more revenue in. So that's a great point as well. I'll ask one more question. Maybe any of you can take this. Are we seeing any examples where AI is enabling entirely new business models, right? So especially in asset finance, where which may not have been possible before. So think of data, think of all of the possibilities of bringing things together. Are there any new business models that we can think of? I'll open it up to you, Brett, Darren, or Jeff.
It helps a lot on inventory floor plan financing. So that's an area I think that you can really improve your audit capabilities and manage your assets a little better. There's so much data there to analyze, and so we're getting into that business, and we're building AI tools around that to facilitate a better risk environment. So I think that's one area where it's building a new product, but it's making a product more doable from a risk standpoint and compliance standpoint.
That's a great point. I think that's I've been looking into that as well. I mean, obviously, as Solify, we acquired DataScan a few months or a couple of months back. I'm actually sitting at the DataScan office right now in Alpharetta in Georgia. So this is music to my ears, and it's absolutely one of those spaces where we've been looking closely as well. So thanks, Jeff, for adding that. So let's maybe move over to our third segment. We want to look at how do we move beyond POCs, right? So I think we all know the common sort of graveyard of POCs problem in financial services. I think there was a recent McKinsey report titled State of AI in 2025. That's been filling up my LinkedIn feed over the last 10 days or so. Normally McKinsey and some of the consulting firms have been a bit on the back foot talking about AI, but this is actually quite a nice comprehensive overview of how organizations are really kind of dealing with different aspects and elements of AI. And it talks about how 2/3 of the companies that have started implementing AI haven't really managed to move beyond the POC stage. I think we actually just saw that exactly very similar result in our poll as well. In the audience poll, it's exactly 67% of the audience says testing exploratory AI use cases. So it's exactly the kind of numbers we've been hearing, we've been seeing. So let's talk about whether we think this number is similar for our industry. Maybe Brett or Darren, what do you think? Is this similar in our industry? Why do so many AI initiatives really get stuck at the proof of concept stage in asset finance?
I can jump in. I think for the most part, people are just hesitant. They love to see that somebody else has done something first, so they can learn from that or watch and see how that's gonna turn out before they say, okay, now we'll bring this into our shop and see if we can make it work. So I think there's some hesitancy on there, but I think to an earlier point that Brett made, it's here that we're embracing it and realizing now how do we use it. I think that mindset is coming across our industry, and people are realizing this, so they're starting to do more. But I think sometimes people focus on some shiny opportunity that looks exciting and not think about really what the true maybe ROI is of it, or the true value of doing it. Like, hey, what if we could eliminate this process or this data population into a form? That's great, but is there a business need beyond that that's larger? And so maybe it pauses because there's some ideation that happens and not really fully thinking it through, or they do the first step that says, hey, this is great, it fills this form, but they could have thought about it a little bit further and made something that's much more functional, much more useful, and see value in it. And if they have an initial project like that kind of flops, there might be some hesitancy to say, well, how much more do we want to do with this? Because that one, wasn't as widely accepted or as successful as we'd hoped for. So I think some of it is just maybe a little bit of, inadequate planning. I don't want to say poor planning, but maybe inadequate. We're not thinking big enough, and really having maybe the right people at the table to talk about potential opportunities. It's something that we're trying to do, is develop an internal think tank, if you will, with all department heads or people that we see as potential people that come up with ideas in their day-to-day or their department's day-to-day to help take it beyond that proof of concept and move it into application. And we've had a couple successful things go live, and those are good instigators for other people to take it into their departments and say, okay, well, we can do this. It is working, and then have it sustained. But I think it's enough planning up front, and truly, I think communicating it throughout your organization. It starts with management. It's already been said, but making sure everybody else knows, like, hey, go out and play with some of these tools. Do it in the right domain. Making sure, depending how your security system's set up and your group is, you're supposed to be on chat. You're supposed to stay in Copilot, whatever is safest and most compliant with your organization. But let people start playing around with it, and you find some stars in the mix that, like, hey, we got to lean on, potentially some new employees to help you move it beyond the proof of concept.
Yeah, and Gaurav, are there similar patterns that we can perhaps see in other industries that may be an inspiration for us in asset finance to maybe address some of the hesitancy that Darren referred to?
Yes, well, I think Darren hit on some key points, which really underlie, this chasm between POC to production deployments. So if we really, parse out all these studies that are talking about why POCs aren't going to production, it really boils down to, a couple of key reasons. And none of them are going to surprise the folks on this call, on this webcast. So first and foremost, those things are not integrated into existing workflows. So if you don't integrate this new technology into the workflow that your people know and are used to, it creates onboarding friction. Number two, oftentimes these projects can be started without an end in mind, without a goal of, well, what is it that I want to accomplish? I mean, by the way, kudos to everyone on this panel. Brett, Darren, Jeff, all of you articulated very specific things, in terms of customer outcomes, in terms of business outcomes. Those need to be, kind of codified, and we need to put in place KPIs to measure them. So most AI projects are not moving forward because of the tech, but because the P&L wasn't ready, wasn't defined, the data wasn't ready, or governance considerations came in too late, or it wasn't really well thought out how they're going to integrate with how people do the work today. So now our Omega's three rules for this are: number one, pick a workflow with real volume and a business plan behind it, business pain behind it. Number two, think about any governance and explainability, transparency considerations from day zero. And number three, designs POCs with measurable metrics so that you know what success looks like. An extension of number three, just because three sounds better than four, more elegant, would be that you've got to then figure out how to drive that adoption in the enterprise. It's much easier when you're integrated into an existing workflow. And I would note, Karan, that Solify, in that sense, is particularly well positioned as a platform that touches all aspects of the cycle, right? Both from a data comprehensive data perspective, but also from the ability to look at all that data and help its clients figure out, where they can move the needle across origination to underwriting to support and operations.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And I think this is how we've also been looking at it, right? So we've been looking at this holistically across the entire life cycle, and kind of working with many of our clients to see which of those moments in that life cycle would probably be the low-hanging fruits. To your point, pick the right use cases, get things moving, and think of the explainability, the governance, and then essentially also define the metrics. I think that's key, right? Like, what are you trying to solve for? Is it really, when we talk about efficiency, are you going to have less number of people being required for that particular process? Is it about people being able to process things faster instead of less number of people being in the process? Is it about the quality of the decision making? So I think there's quite a few of those metrics that we all need to start thinking of and bring to the table. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think if there's one kind of picture in your head that I could leave you with, it's to sort of think about this conceptually. Think of AI as a democratizer, right? Because in many ways, what you're getting today through these AI tools, historically, it was not accessible unless you hired a top-tier consulting company, spent millions of dollars. Now you're getting world-class design, world-class summarization, Q&A, analysis of content, world-class content generation. So, and AI itself, right? These models are trained on the totality of public human information. So they're able to bridge information chasms in a way that the world has never seen before, quite frankly. Today, anyone with an internet connection in the furthest corner of the world has access to PhD level expertise. And yes, it's very important to trust but verify and use common sense when trusting the output of AI, but you've got that accessible at your fingertips in a way that just wasn't possible before. So I think that the picture really is that it is allowing small businesses to punch way above their weight class in terms of competing with, traditionally larger, more resourceful companies, because it's unleashing, it's collapsing the friction involved in getting access to data and best practices from across the world in whatever domain you are looking at. That to me is profound, right? That to me is really profound because look, I mean, we used to go to libraries. Then on the internet, you can find a bunch of reports, but it's still painful. You got to download them, you got to read them. You can't ask any questions, you can't clarify. There's a lot of friction. Today, you have an interactive, personalized system that can bring you the totality of the world's information, and you can ask it targeted questions in relation to your specific problem iteratively until you get to an answer. And that is a huge enabler of both empowering people within our orgs, but also empowering our organizations to step up to the next level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fully agree with that, Gaurav. So looking at the time, I think just moving quickly to the next segment where we, while I move to the next segment, Gaurav, there is one question that came from the audience on the governance and explainability piece. It's like, how do you solve for the challenge of connecting AI to siloed internal databases while being careful of the strict access controls, not giving access to sensitive internal data without compromising the data governance?
It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. And I'd say, and that goes back to, the data shows us that 3 out of 4 employees are kind of using it with or without permission in the workplace in white collar work. So take organizational charge to have a sanctioned way of using AI. Companies like Solify I believe, Karan, you're taking steps to help sort of guide clients in that. If there's a business level agreement, you can get those data protections in place. So, but if there's an individual using an off-the-shelf web-based model, absolutely, it's a massive risk. And I think so it's, every organization, I really should be thinking about how do I provide a sanctioned way for my team to start using these products, whether it's for one-off things or for POCs. It's a key way to, first of all, make sure that your proprietary data doesn't get leaked. And that is a very big concern, by the way, with the free and consumer tier offerings out there. So make no mistake, there is, when as they say, if the thing is free, you are the product. So you don't want to expose your crown jewels. And that's a mistake that, has been happening from, quite frankly, the earliest days of Gen AI. The second part of this is that always look at Gen AI in relation to traditional AI. Don't forget, Gen AI is kind of the tip of the visible iceberg at the moment, but there's this entire mass of traditional and predictive deterministic AI that's also an important complement. And it's for the types of business cases that we're discussing in mission critical enterprise use cases. It's the real core successful architecture that's emerging is marrying the predictive AI with the Gen AI, because Gen AI is flexible but unpredictable. But our businesses require predictability, auditability, compliance, and transparency. So I'd say take those 2 steps, cover the organization from the top down, and then recognize that Gen AI is part of the pie, not the whole pie. It's very useful, but there's more underneath it that can and should be leveraged, because that allows you to make business critical decisions with confidence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. So I think as we kind of move to the next segment is around, how do we balance innovation with indeed transparency and governance? So, right. So sort of continuing the same topic. We asked everyone the question as part of the audience poll already. I believe all of the questions went out at the same time. And I see that, the question we had was, what remains your biggest barrier to moving, AI initiatives beyond POCs? That was the data readiness, unproven business case, and so on. But which risk concerns you most when deploying AI in secured finance? And I think there you see, loss of human judgment and expertise, and regulatory or compliance exposure as really popping up as those 2 top questions. So obviously there's, on one side, a lot of rising scrutiny on AI. There's regulation, there's risk in finance. On the other side, we really need to set up principles for responsible AI at scale. So I guess the question I would want to ask the panelists again is, how can organizations best strike the right balance between innovation, governance, without moving fast without breaking the trust? So maybe Darren or Brett, one of you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I'd say, I mean, trust but verify really comes into play. I mean, for example, as we roll out, some efficiencies within credit processing, for example, is running the two processes concurrently. You use the version of AI that you're using to do whatever task. For us, it's simplifying the summarization of the data that's already there instead of a manual set of eyes looking at it. We're trying to automate that and make that a smoother process. Again, some of the manual work that isn't as fun and is cool. So, but then running those simultaneously next to each other, comparing, seeing is the data being grabbed from your new AI process the same as what you would get manually? If so, then you get more comfortable with rolling it out. And for us, we decided to do some audits and some back checks to sample some of those contracts that were, or excuse me, applications that were handled through that new process, and go back through and make sure that there hasn't been any hallucinations and no issues with data. And we've made the wrong decision or the wrong pricing decision, to kind of check that through. But at the same time, then policizing, if you will, putting a policy around it, saying this is how we do it, because to the stakeholders that you're going to need to explain it to, be it the ownership group or be it auditors someday, we can show them a demo, which has really helped. I think for me, I'm being a visual person. It's great to show people what you're doing, what you're changing in this process to build that trust. But at the same time, then documenting exactly how things are being handled, so you have that as kind of your parameters. It's great for training, and it's great again for those people that are coming to look at how you do the process to make sure they can, test it and it holds up.
Yeah. Thanks, Darren, and fully agree in terms of the realities of how you look at evals observability on the AI part, making sure there's no hallucinations. And Brett, I mean the add-on question I'd have to you as you respond is think of also the readiness of the organization. Are there any practical tools, I don't know, internal governance committees or whatever else to set up that basically also helps the entire organization have that trust? In addition to your clients as well. So I'll let you take the stage. Thanks.
Yeah. I think what was important for us, and again, we're not like done with this journey yet, right? Like we're living through it right now. But in evaluating these tools, getting the people on the front lines involved, and even some of the vetting conversations with some of the vendors we're using, and being super involved up front so they know what to look for. They've identified things that are important to them to make their process more efficient. But just what Darren said, this takes more work, right? And people need to see the potential and potential value. And so the earlier you can bring in more people in your organization to understand that value up front, and work incentivizes them to understand the efficiencies that this can create, because there is a lot of, you're checking it, right? Like it's spitting out the information, then you have to double check it, right, to make sure it's okay. And one of the questions that we had through this is, we're not looking to get to like an automated answer with no human intervention. At the end of the day, a human's making a decision, and if you don't have a human making a decision in this deal, that opens up a whole can of legal liability. But if there is a human making decisions, that's the most important thing. So all we're trying to do is, what Jeff said earlier, do all these things at the same time, so we can compress the timeline for a human decision. So we're not to the point yet where we've Darren, we have your policies in place as to how we're checking and what we're checking, but we need to write those, and we'll be getting there pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would just echo that. That is exactly right, which is, when we develop at Omega, naturally, we've been internal, we drink our own champagne. We've been internal adopters of AI systems since way back when we started. And one of the things our data scientists always do is they spend a lot of time with people at the front lines of business to get what they call domain expertise. What that really means is, well, how do you evaluate if an output is good or bad? How do you, kind of do the sanity checks? What's the intuition in Brett's head that people need to learn? By the way, this is, if done successfully, that codifies a lot of things to sleep. Because what we're talking about is if you can compress human time, you're making those humans orders of magnitude more productive in what actually matters. And you're saving them the 80% of the time that they might be spending on collecting, gathering, structuring, retrieving information that, quite frankly, isn't the highest value use of the time. So this is fundamentally about scaling businesses, making ourselves more, just growth, facilitating growth. So that's exactly right. And, this is, by the way, a major area of innovation that we're going to see over the next 12 months, which is around explainability in the foundation models themselves. This is kind of the frontier right now, where a lot of the foundation models out there have realized that this black box approach, where they can't explain how they got to an answer, is a limiter. And so we're going to see, across the ecosystem, a lot of progress here in the next 2 to 4 quarters. I think coupling that with internal benchmarks for reliability is a key combination to achieve success.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gaurav. Go.
Yeah, if I give you a short story of one of my struggles with AI and how I dealt with it, it's with spreading financial statements, automated spreading. I'm old school kind of guy, been around a long time, and one of the ways I learned credit was I spread thousands and hundreds of thousands of financial statements in my career, right? And when I first job, that's all I did basically was spread financial statements till midnight every night or later. And so, but when you do that, you learn the credit, right? You read the notes, you understand the numbers, you have to put the numbers in the right place, you have to reclassify things. You got audited statements, you got company prepared statements at 1 year, so you got to figure out how they're organized and really understand the credit if you do it right. Right? And you learn how to spread statements. Now you got a system spread them for you. Right? How are we going to train our people? Well, the rules that I put together is, they may spread it for you, but you still got to check it and you got to read the notes and you got to understand it. And you can put things around it for them to then understand things like, all right, so what prompts do you need to be prompting AI in terms of questions that you should be asking them to go do the research for you, which, Gaurav said that it was a great point. Don't spend a lot of time doing the research, have the data come back to you immediately, but you still got to ask the question. And then you got to absorb that research and double click on it for the next question, right? And then come with a complete analysis around what you just did. So you use the tool, AI, to get a lot of the information organized and go find research for you, but you're still doing the analysis around it. And that's what we want to use it for. And what it really does, from my standpoint, the way I think about it is AI is a capacity multiplier, right? And it's not a replacement for the people. You still need good analysts. You still need to train those analysts. And we're trying to train a lot of new people in our organization. So you're still doing all the same things. You're just doing it faster and more efficiently. And it gives you more capacity, which saves you money in the long term and makes you more competitive.
Couldn't have said it better. Again, AI is a capacity multiplier. And I think we all need to think of how do we get our people, how do we get our humans, our human agents, fully part of, part of this process to check, to understand, to prompt, to research, to analyze. And I think that's absolutely a key element of an AI journey for all of the organizations out there. Looking at the time, I'd love to get to the final segment, and let's really look at the future here. And I think we'll have the nice globe in front of us, and let's think of what's next for asset finance. So I'll do a round robin with each of the panelists. Anyone can go first. What will AI change most fundamentally about asset finance in the next 3 to 5 years? So let's, Brett, you're first on my screen. So should I go with you?
Boy, I think how I think about it is if we were to start KLC from the ground up today, like kind of just what you did, Jeff, right? How would you go about it? And that's with the AI tools available today, it's a pretty mind-blowing experiment. And if so just trying to take a step back and figure out, and literally it's every silo you can incorporate this AI into. And so for me, it's a hard question. I think it's literally everything. and it's overwhelming. And so you kind of need to take it a piece at a time. But I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of automation in every facet, from the revenue generating side, prospecting, operational, and I think it's going to make your really good employees just absolute monsters, right? You talk about doubling their productivity, like talk about 10xing productivity. And so I think to me, it's going to reward AI is going to reward the curious people in your organization, and you have to find those people. There's people in organizations that run from A to B, and they do that well. It's those people that tell them to run from A to B, and they go to, hey, what about C? And then they run to F, and they're asking questions about G. And that kind of curious person, I think, is going to be tremendous. And those companies that have those kind of people will be tremendously rewarded. So I think it's literally everything, Karan. It's a big question.
That makes makes sense. Darren, you want to go next?
Sure. I really think it's really we will be thinking about everything, but I think the speed at which we're able to make decisions and go about change is because the first thing that comes to mind is going to be, it should be eventually, is how will AI do this for us, or how can we go about this with AI? So being able to roll out a new initiative or make a change, we're going to think that first instead of, potentially how we've looked at how we did it in the past or how other companies have done it. We're probably going to rely on that as our strategic thinker first is asking AI. So I think we'll be able to do things faster. That'll continue to accelerate. And I think implementing something, the accountability and next steps will be managed by the AI tools that we have too. So I think we're just going to go to that first as our first resource, involve the right people, of course, and then go about our business, and things will move at a faster pace. So I think it's just going to be quicker decisioning and probably better research too. We're going to be able to gather that much faster and make an informed decision.
Absolutely. Jeff?
I think really three things. I think the independents that utilize and drive their business with AI will dominate the mid-market on down and even branch up into the large ticket space, which we certainly do. And we've done some deals just because of some of the ways we process our business. Secondarily, I think liquidity in the marketplace will improve because of the access to data and the better data available. We'll be able to present our businesses, whether we're an independent, a bank, a captive, whatever. I think it'll improve everything. And then lastly, I'll just put a prediction out there. Embedded finance plus AI will dominate the market by 2030. That's what I think is going to happen.
I think amen to that. Gaurav, we'll get your last nuggets as well.
And I think Solify is so well positioned to innovate this future, because if I were to sum up what we're hearing, and it's very consistent with what we're seeing and thinking, today asset finance is, it's episodic, it's batch based, it's document driven, and it requires way too many manual touch points that anybody on this, call wants. What we are moving towards is a real-time system that's data native, that's always on operating system, that's continuously improving. So and I do think that, given where you sit with Solify, touching that end-to-end process, you're so well equipped to drive that real-time operating system of the future.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gaurav. I think that's definitely something that we keep thinking about, and we'd love to see how we can contribute from our perspective to the industry and learn from everyone else as well. Looking at the time, I think this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've really enjoyed it with everyone. So I'll try to quickly do a summary of some of the best nuggets we've heard today, right? So, starting at the AI landscape conversation, talking about the seismic shift, everyone referred to that. How do we replace latency and complacency? How do we make sure our leadership is embracing this change and then kind of helping with the rest of the organization to take away mundane tasks, to really kind of use GenAI across the organization. I think, again, I'll use the other quote: AI is an Iron Man, not Terminator. I think that will absolutely stick with us. We're still in the early innings, so if you haven't started off yet, you can go fast. You can still start. So don't hesitate if you feel you've been left behind or you've not missed the boat. Humans are still required for empathy, for judgment, and for various other aspects. So the AI is not going to replace humans. We spoke about key use cases, credit underwriting, operational efficiency, document intelligence, using it in customer sales. Jeff spoke about new models, for example, in inventory flow plan data. We spoke about, yes, we've got a POC issue, but we are moving beyond it. We have to help people that are hesitant to really kind of look at, making sure you can still take your first steps, pick the right use cases, think of explainability, think of the metrics that you're going to measure with, and think of AI as a democratizer. It's going to make things way more accessible for you and the organization. And then finally, think of balancing hallucinations. And I think at the end, everyone's nuggets really pointed back to all of the great use cases that we are going to see in the future. It's going to 10x our productivity. Let's hope that's going to be the case. So I'll hand over to Rita with the final note that if you want to keep reading more on this conversation, there's also an ebook we are publishing from Solify that's available for a free download. And I'll let Rita wrap up for the rest of the webcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Karan, and thank you to everybody on the panel, and thanks to all of you for joining our live stream today. Please scan the QR code that's on your screen right now to get Solify's AI ebook and continue the conversation on how to embrace AI with clarity, strategy, and in confidence. Also, if you look in the chat, we've provided a link to take a brief survey about today's event. Please consider taking a few minutes just to share your thoughts with us. Thanks again for joining today's live stream. Have a great day.
Thank you.